Hey guys, this is it for you all signed up. I decided to go ahead and just tape you a course and the final session. And then, if you'd like, email me back and let's schedule a discussion time. This is the online course that about four of you haven't gone through. I was. It's just been kind of hard to get you all an email. So in the future, I'm just going to lock up some links, and if you miss it, you miss it because it's been a little bit of a chase, but I'm happy to do it. So I'm going to present the final material, and then, like I say, I'll throw out about three or four samples for just discussion time if you want to do that. Sometimes that's very valuable, but this will be the last of the Praxis course that you've taken on the communication. I'm going to launch in where we left off at the last one here, and we started looking at the get my notes up here. We started looking at the makeup of communication as to the elements of it that make for better communication. And there it is. And so one of the things that we did is we finished off with the hurdles that you face as a communicator. And I think we ended up with stimulation, scarcity, bias, and disinterest, which is a big one, getting interest. Okay, now what you'll find when you begin to put together, for example, a communication piece like a newsletter, you're going to find that there are about, well, let's say 10 elements that you want to remember even about written communication. Now, the greatest enemy to communication is boredom. And we miss that. For example, looking at a website, most people will give you no more than 7 seconds to grab their interest, catch a topic they're interested in. Most people listen very selfishly. Actually, everybody does. So you need to realize when you're writing or when you're going to speak, the first thing people are going to ask is, what's in it for me? And a lot of us who communicate from more of an altruistic standpoint underestimate that and don't realize you've got to address that as to what's in it for them. If they read your newsletter, what's in it for them? If they listen to your sermon, what's in it for them? Write that on your notes. Think about it. Study it. So that's a big one. So in great communication, you want to, one, pique their interest. You want to know what's interesting in their lives. Find a common point to have your topic connect with what is most interesting to them. For example, sports illustrations really don't hit with women very well, and a lot of speakers, uh, you know, do it anyway. And so right off, they lose their feminine audience because they're not interested in it. Now, of course, you can do a little thing, but if that's all you do, you've got problems. And so, what is interesting? Let's take millennials. Are the Beatles really that interesting to millennials? I don't think so. So if you're going to use the Beatles, you got to connect them with something they're interested in. Two, all communication to some extent requires sometimes education. Anybody who sells any product knows, particularly a new one, you have to educate people as to what it is before they're likely to buy into it. So some of your topics you might have to introduce the folks into some elements of it so they can understand what you're talking about. Curiosity is a big one too. People do nothing until you make them curious. And I'm going to give you a little tip here. You can keep people curious to your message. This is $1 million gift to you guys. Start your message sometimes with a story, but don't finish it. Get almost done and get about 80% through, and then move on to your scripture or say, we'll talk about this later in the message. Or later on, you're going to be surprised what happens. That little device or tool there will keep a lot of curiosity going in their mind as to what's going on. Okay, the other thing is make it clear. People, If they come to your service or they read your newsletter or read your writing again and again and there's no clear instruction as to what to do about it, it's funny, that actually compounds their sense of boredom with you. So come up with clear steps of what they should do about what you just told them. All communication is personal. You got to tell them something about yourself without fixating on yourself. Something personal, how something reacted to you personally. And next, it's got to have power to it. And so much of church communication today is powerless because it's too clever and everything. You'd be surprised the number of times sermons I listen to that Jesus isn't even mentioned once. So Jesus is our power. They overcame him by the blood of their testimony and blood of the Lamb and their testimony. So make it personal and clear. Surprise is a great one too. Throw in something they were not expecting at all. Also novelty, and then we've already talked about comparison and contrast. We'll go into that, but I hope you took notes on that. Think about it, and then when you write and when you speak, think about those things. Okay, pause. Next section. Okay. We already covered. You want to talk about what do you want them to know, what do you want them to feel, what do you want them to do. You should write every one of those on the top of all your sermons of communication. What do you want them to know? What do you want them to feel? And what do you want them to do? Okay. Now, not everyone is an equal learner, and you have to gauge your audience in terms of several factors in their life. Most Americans read and think at the 5th grade level. I'm going to pause so you can soak that up. Most of you reading have at least a college education. Many like me have post-grad, and what you have to realize is you're trained to think about 10 years above your average listener. Now think about that. I think you should stretch your audience a little bit, but the range of thinking process or processes that people can do along with you, trust me, is far below what you're used to. And that is one of the major complaints that I hear about communication in the church, is it's so hard for people to understand that they just kind of give up. Number one, under we're not all equal learners. 2, college people think at the 8th grade level. So figure a 14-year-old then. That's what people have gone to college. That's where they've dropped down and dumbed down to. So that's where you begin. And you got to ask yourself, okay, what's the level of vocabulary and all that? And I have a program that we use when I write, and we run whatever I write through, and it tells us the grade level. And so we try to keep it I try to keep my writing and notes and stuff at about the 10th to 11th grade. And it seems to work well. I like to lift people a bit. Okay, some topics, it takes a base knowledge to understand what you're talking about. So one of the advantages of having series and whatnot, you can build a basic understanding as you go. It's like trying to learn to drive and all that. Okay. 4, not everyone has the same background church-wise. They don't know what terms are. You'd be surprised the number of people who don't know what saved means or don't know what baptism means. Pentecostals use flow in the Spirit. People don't know what in the world you're talking about. So wash your terms and either don't use them or define them quickly as you speak. Number 5, some people have a need to control their input, so they'll be just very slow to receive you. 6, many and most people can't handle dissonance or ambiguity. They can't handle conflict or ambiguity. So if you're teaching kind of nuances or using humor in that way, or you take on the nature of a debater, most people have trouble with it. They want clear cut and they want harmony. You need to write that down. They want harmony when they hear a speaker. 7, one of the things that we need to know is that repetition is good. I'm comfortable telling people to repeat the main point 6 to 12 times in your message. Keep coming back to it. Just for fun. Go listen to some great black preachers. I learn from the way they use language more than anybody else. But watch their use of repetition and harmony, and also sort of a poetic try. Go listen to them. They're going to give you some great ideas. Okay, and then people also want to know, which is number 8, how they'll fit in. From what you're saying, they're going to be asking themselves, can I do this? And am I going to be able to fit into what they're saying? So you want to speak inclusively. Let me give you a little tip. This again is worth $1,000,000. Um, never say they, never say you, always say we and ours. When you're talking to them, our hearts this morning. Don't say they in reference to people who are not in the church out there. Say we. Those of us not here, that kind of thing. And people will sense the ability to be part of what you're doing. And then the final one is people will be asking themselves, how will this affect or help those that I love? So that'll get us through some more material. I've gone pretty fast, but take a look at it and just go through it, review it, go back and forth. Uh, uh, so, and then we'll have our dialogue here. There's a few more things we could study. I will have some notes together for our dialogue. I'll email to you if you want to have that. If not, I'm not worried about it. So, okay, God bless you. Have a super week. Doug signing off here.